to each neighbor and sit in with each other, which we have for the last 2 days or so. You know, just to of going through this torrential storm we have sitting upon us right now. We're all going to be okay.
Well, that is the hope, to be sure. Wayne, we have your number. I'm going to check back with you. We'll be looking at your Facebook page. If it starts to change for the worse, do me a favor. Reach out when you can and just let us know what's going on and what your concerns are so we can keep some tabs of you, okay?
Oh, sounds great and wonderful. And I thank you for this interview. I really appreciate it.
All right, Wayne, be safe. Make sure you're in contact with the people there so you have some support if it goes the wrong way. Take care. We'll check in with you soon. All right, so there are a lot of Waynes out there in areas that are going to be vulnerable, certainly as we get up this West Coast. A couple of reasons. One, you do have storm-savvy people, and there's a little bit of a rigidness when it comes to being told to evacuate. It's something that kind of goes along with being a Floridian. There's a stubbornness to thinking you can get through storms. And also, the West Coast wasn't supposed to get hit. And you heard Wayne saying that he had flights, but they were scheduled for days where once the shift happened, they weren't practical anymore, couldn't get out. And now his flight for tomorrow, obviously, isn't going to happen. There's another aspect as we go to break here. This storm has strengthened. It made landfall as a Category 4. It's also slowed down. Now, that speed is going to mean a lot to scientists, but it certainly means one thing for sure to everybody on the ground: duration. This storm is going to stay longer in places that it hits as it moves, and that is going to be a factor in its destructive capabilities. We're going to take you through that, where the storm has been, what it's done, and where IRMA is still headed. We'll be right back.
A block from the pier, which is just right here behind me. The rain is just starting to pick back up again, and that is something we've been seeing throughout the day today. The rain is heavy, then it's a little light, then it completely stops, and then it starts back up again, and that's exactly what is happening right now. We were at Gulf Coast High School earlier today. That's the only shelter still open in Collier County, and we drove from there to here, so we got to see what the conditions were like on the road. House. Anymore. The storm is approaching, and law enforcement and fire crews, they do not want you on the road anymore. It's no longer safe for anybody to be out, and we witnessed that on our way here. We saw the palm fronds all over the road, which we will show you shortly. You know, the wind is starting to pick up. The rain is getting very heavy at times. Now is the time to start to hunker down. We are actually going to do the same thing. This is our last shot here at the beach, and we're going to head back to our hotel as well. But we wanted to show you what the beach looks like, because I know a lot of you at home are wondering. And take a look at the water. You can see that the waves are just starting to pick up now. And it's really actually pretty calm here. The rain has really soaked into the sand, so even with all of this wind, the sand isn't blowing up into our faces at all at this point. Now, again, you can see that rain is really starting to come down now. So we're going to head this way because I want to show you the road, because it's a totally different story out on the road than it is here on the beach. It's a little calm standing here. But when we cross over this bridge and get onto the road, you'll see, I think it's because of just the wind tunnel with all those trees, that the wind is gustier. So we're just going to step up over here. Already start to feel it a little bit more standing between the trees here. And you can see those palm trees really starting to blow as the wind starts to pick up. And look, right here, palm frond down. On the side of the road over here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Another really big one on the left here. Across the street, another one. Probably can't see further down. But there's another one down by the light. So they're starting to fall. And that's why we're urging you to stay off the roads. It's no longer safe. Again, here comes the rain, even more rain now. We don't even have our camera outside. To put that into perspective, we're shooting on a GoPro because we do not want our cameras out here. We don't want to hurt them because we want to be able to continue to cover this storm for you. So again, we're going to head over to our hotel because we want to seek shelter ourselves. So I will report from there very soon. We just need to get over there. We're just a few minutes away, and we'll talk to you from there. In Collier County, Michelle Kingston, Wink News Now.
A little bit earlier ago, and on her way out, she sent us a picture where a palm tree had fallen on 6th Avenue north in Naples. What you're looking at now is West Palm Beach.
Wow. Heavy the surf is there. And, you know, they're going to get pretty hard as well on the East Coast. And they've seen lots and thousands of power outages. The time right now is 10:27 in the morning. Let's go ahead and get over to Wink News meteorologist Matt Devitt for a complete look at what this is with IRMA. Matt.
Yeah, that's right, guys. So wind gusts currently are around 30, 40, even 50 miles an hour. So is wobbling out of control. There's another pedestrian sign. Behind it. That was a particularly strong run. Sorry, guys. There's another sign behind it that is completely toppled over. We had some structural damage at the hotel that was changed just a reminder, but it's some awnings that are on the roof of the hotel, and it's just getting more and more intense here.
Even if you're not seeing CNN literally wrapping around the Florida Peninsula right now as Hurricane IRMA wraps around the Florida Peninsula, delivering all kinds of misery in its path. Wind kicking up, the rain is really coming down where we are in Miami. It just escapes from breaking news. City officials confirmed to us now that a plane did crack in downtown Miami. We're going to get pictures for you of that. More than 20 planes here in Miami up there at risk. It had to leave them up for 6 or 7 days. They had it to take it down. They did not have that kind of time. So those trains were left up. One has now cracked. It was a building under construction. No word yet if anyone was hurt. But people were told to leave the buildings with grades as the storm got closer. We'll be watching more on that in minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to go now to St. Petersburg, Florida. Congressman Charlie Crist joins me now by phone. Congressman, thank you so much for being with us. Look, you've been in public service in the state of Florida for a long time. As Attorney General, as Governor, now as a Congressman. We've been told by so many emergency management officials that this storm is not like any other that Florida has ever seen. What are you seeing right now where you are?
Well, thank you first for your excellent coverage. What we're seeing here in Tampa Bay, and I'm in downtown St. Petersburg, actually. What we're seeing is decent wind. It's not terrible, probably around 20 miles an hour. We do have rain, and you know the conditions are not that bad, but we know there's more to come because we've seen what you've been broadcasting throughout the morning.
No, what we're getting here in Miami, you're going to get a potentially much worse high in the coming hours. And Congressman, I don't know if you can see behind me, but the dots that lie behind us that were submerged in water. We're getting a storm surge here in Miami, expecting to 3 to 6 feet at max. Up the western coast of Florida, that storm surge could be 10 to 15 feet. How do you think Tampa Bay, the Tampa Bay area, will be able to handle that?
Obviously, storm surge like that is the thing that you really worry about. But depending on where the storm continues to track, it will be a huge factor in how much of a surge we experience, whether we get it on the front side of the storm before the eye comes toward us, or on the back side of the storm after it's passed by. And that all depends, as you know, whether the eye goes to the east of us or to the west of us. We just don't know that for sure yet. So only time will tell.
And everyone watching that very, very closely. Again, millions of people in the path of the storm, hundreds of thousands under mandatory evacuation orders, tens of thousands in shelters. What's the status of the shelters, Congressman, as far as you know in Pinellas County where you are?
They're pretty full now. I toured some of them yesterday, one special needs shelter, and we have got a lot of shelters. Fortunately, people have heeded the evacuation orders, which is important. So I think we're doing pretty well when it comes to shelters. We have some shelters that are taking, pets, cats, and dogs as well, which are very important to people. So I think we're pretty well prepared here. I really do.
Now, 1 million people plus without power already, mostly in southern Florida. That number will go up because there's still plenty of Florida that hasn't seen the worst of the storm, not near it yet. How long do you imagine it will take to get that power back up online once this storm passes into tomorrow?
It may take a while. It's hard to say for certain how long that would take, and it kind of depends on what grid you're on. A lot of people in downtown areas, they have a better grid many times because it's where the hospitals are located. So that can be a factor. So it just depends on where you're located and how severe the winds are, whether it takes down the power lines or not. And if it does, then it may take a while to get power back on.
And Congressman, like we said, you've been in public service in Florida a long time. You've lived through storms before in Florida many times before. We're in the middle of it right now, but let's look forward a little bit. What do people need to brace themselves for as we deal with these days ahead?
Well, I think the important thing is having been well prepared already. The storm is upon us now. We're going to get it later in the day, probably into the evening here in Tampa Bay. And the warnings that have come out from state and local and federal authorities have been continued applied. If they're hunkered down, then they should have, the water. Some prescription drugs that they might need for several days. But, that kind of preparation for most people has already occurred, and that's a very good thing. That will sustain folks for a while, obviously. Once this storm gets past us, hopefully it moves on fairly rapidly, and we can start to get back to some sense of normalcy. That's what everyone is hoping for and looking forward to.
Hope for the best, plan for the worst. That is what has been happening in Florida for days. Congressman Charlie Crist, thank you so much for being with us. It's so important to hear from public officials like you these days to give people a sense of what to expect, how to get through this, how to be best prepared. We thank you so much for your time, sir. Chris, I want to go back to you now in Naples.
Obviously, Charlie Crist, congressman now, former governor, knows what it's like to have to lead in a situation like this. We heard from the new FEMA director the other day. You have three objectives as a leader in a situation like this: inform, influence, and inspire. And we're in the phase now of just holding everything in pause until they see what this storm does. The aftermath is going to be where government's really going to have to get into action. So let's bring someone in. Bill Moss, I've kept you dry as long as I could, but now you have to come out. The city manager here in Naples, thank you for joining us. I wish it weren't under this, but let's be honest. This is nothing compared to what you're worried about coming your way. What are your concerns?
We have a long time ago, but we've been preparing all week for this. I've got all employees in the city with a lot of equipment. Our job is to implement our plan to get the city open and back into business as quickly as possible. So come daybreak, we've got a strategic plan where we'll start clearing all the roads so that we can do search and rescue, so that we can provide police, fire, and medical services to those that have stayed. And more importantly, we'd like to have our people return to the city as quickly as we can. So we want to clear the roads as long as they recognize they could be days or weeks without power. Temperature's going to go back to the 90s in a couple of days. It's going to be uncomfortable, but I think we're going to be fine.
So let's talk about the pluses, and then we'll talk about the concerns. Pluses, you've got a plan in place. Plus, you've been doing this over 40 years. Another plus is that for whatever reason, the people here, and I know this is a snowbird, city, but of about 19,000 in the city proper, about 2/3 are believed to have evacuated. That's a huge plus that you have here. What do you make of that on the good side?
That is good, that people recognize the potential problems, even though we couldn't really tell where the storm was going to go. Now it looks like it's one of the worst situations that we had hoped for. I think the storm surge now is going to be our biggest threat. The wind is going to be damaging, but not to our structures. We've got good construction standards. The problem we're going to have is this small town has about 20,000 trees in the public rights of way in the beaches, and those trees are going to go down, and then they're going to block the roads, and they're going to rip up water and sewer lines. So we're going to try to provide water and sewer for as long as possible, but we have to be ready to shut down the system, try to isolate the breaks, and then restore the system to make sure people have that vital water and sewer service.
Quick note, the Governor Scott has a home here in Naples, but that wasn't driving his concern. He was saying it's uniquely vulnerable to storm surge. And before the broadcast this morning, I went down on the Gulf side, right? And the marina there already looked like it had all it could take in terms of its bulkheading. And that was before any of this. What do you think about storm surge? What are you expecting? What can it do?
Well, storm surge hasn't been much of a problem in the past, but there's no doubt that this is a very, very serious threat. And if it does come up, it's going to be a long time before that water recedes and we can get to those properties. So we hope that anybody anywhere near the beach has already moved inland and at least on the second floor.
Well, you can tell you've been doing it 40 years. When a gust like that comes through, that was a little taste of the real deal. You didn't even blink. So hopefully it's going to be needed. Thank you for being with us. Let me know how we can help while we're here.
Good luck to everybody. Thank you.
All right, that was Bill Moss, city manager here in Naples, 40 years of experience. Experience pays in a situation like this, but it also informs him, where we were talking before he came on, they don't know what's going to happen here because they haven't seen anything like Irma. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we have also seen what this storm is capable of from what it's done already.
It's off, and it's raining, getting
very
very windy, and we just pray now that, probably won't have anything rough when we get there, but we got our life, and that's all that counts.
Thanks very much. Stay safe. Get inside. And again, we're in a protected area here at the hotel that we're staying at. This is a pet-friendly hotel as well, so a lot of folks have been coming out here with their dogs and pets to try to kind of help them stay relieved as well. This area was completely filled with plants and patio furniture. I saw them actually clear this out last night. There are some sandbags around here as well. Go ahead and spin around to kind of show you the wind that is continuing here as well. We were in the hotel. We've been in the hotel. We've taken some power hits over the last 12 hours. We do have power now, luckily, but during those power hits at one of them, we were actually in the elevator and get stuck for a couple of minutes. Lesson learned there. We've been taking the stairs the remainder of the time. I've been telling people too, as I see them go over to the elevator, you might want to take the stairs instead of going in there. The hotel does have plenty of food. We had a full breakfast. They extended the breakfast here at the hotel. It's interesting sitting in the lobby and just kind of hearing the discussions from people that are all over South Florida. And as you heard just from Mary, people that are from the West Coast as well, that are mingling, chatting, becoming friends as they try to ride out this storm.
About these hotels where people have sought refuge, they have to be staffed, and so you've got workers there in the hotel. You mentioned the breakfast. It certainly doesn't just appear out of thin air. You've got people preparing those meals and helping to keep the people inside those hotels, the guests, comfortable, and that really should be commended and should not go unnoticed and unmentioned, don't you think?
Exactly. The staff here has been over the top, extremely friendly to us as well, accommodating us here as a news crew, saying, hey, why don't you go in the back? There's a spot there. You'll be protected. You can kind of come in out, put your equipment there. And even just me, as you mentioned, we're a crew from Boston, so I'm trying to get an idea.
All right, you've been listening to our Miami station, WFOR, as they continue to track Hurricane Irma as it makes its way up the Florida Keys. Arlene Keano is in Florida City near Homestead. It is the last mainland town before Hurricane Irma reaches the Florida Keys, and she joins us on the phone. Elaine, you've been doing some incredible reporting from the field there. Tell us what you're seeing.
So Vlad and Stephanie, right now are the strongest winds yet that we have felt here in Florida City. And it was a noticeable increase in those wind speeds once the eye of Irma made landfall in the lower Keys. That is when we really noticed the difference. That's when things became more intense. That rain was coming down in sheets. It was coming down essentially sideways, blowing sideways. That's when we saw this metal sign in front of the hotel where we are basically peel off and peel back and become potentially a dangerous projectile. So right now, this is definitely the most intense that it has felt in Florida City. And it can only, you can only imagine what it must feel like in the Keys, where, as we already know, officials have been warning the potentially catastrophic effects that Irma would bring. And of course, in the Florida Keys, in Key West and some of those lower Keys, particularly the storm surge is a major concern. And that is something that we know has been in the past, something they have grappled with, and some residents have said, look, we're not going to leave. We've been able to weather other storms, but this time, the warnings from the National Weather Service were enough to get some of those longtime Floridians out of the Keys and evacuated actually to the hotel where we are staying. And I had a chance to speak with some of them earlier, and they said, for whatever reason, this storm felt different to them. And some of them tried to stay put. They really were watching that forecast track right up until, say, Saturday morning, when they made the decision, you know what, it is just too risky. We cannot stay here. So they hopped on Route 1 over.
I'm Anderson Cooper. Welcome back to our continuing coverage of Hurricane Irma. I'm in the city of Tampa, where there really is no indication at this point of the storm that is yet to come. Obviously, things are going to be getting worse and worse later throughout the day into the evening hours. That's when we're really expecting the worst of this. John Berman is in Miami. Chris Cuomo is in Naples, Florida for us. We have correspondents all throughout the region and in other states as well, because this storm is not just an event for Florida. It's going to be affecting other states as well. But I want to go to John Berman. John, there was a report you mentioned just a short time ago of a crane collapsing in Miami. What have you learned about that?
That's right. A crane has cracked. Officials want to be clear to say it's not a full collapse. The standing part of the crane has not pulled off of the building, but it does appear that the boom has cracked off. This was a source of concern for people in this city. 20 to 25 cranes do line the city right now. It's a sign of the sort of the economic boom that's happening in Miami right now. They did not have time to take them down. I believe we have with us a witness, someone who saw this crane crack. Gideon Ape joins me by the phone right now. He is in downtown Miami. Gideon, give me a sense of what you saw.
Hi, well, really, I was just riding the storm out like many people here in downtown Miami, and heard a loud crack, and then like a boom that kind of followed that. And so I assumed that something large fell, and I looked out the window and looked up, and I saw the just some remnants of the crane falling down to the building next to me. And so right now it's cracked, and looking at it right now, there's a little metal piece that's attached to, I guess, like the crane chain or something like that, and it's swinging around and it's busting out other windows of the property itself. And so that's pretty much what I saw, and I heard more than what I saw, but that's the...
Yeah, officials had told us leading up into the storm that these cranes were built to withstand winds of 145 miles an hour. We're not there. The wind gusts we're told right now in some of the high rises about 100 miles an hour. Obviously, at least this crane on a building under construction right now, couldn't withstand that. It did crack. What
Did it look like there were any people? I can't imagine anyone was out on the streets in these conditions, but did you see any signs of people nearby when you looked out your window?
Not at all. I mean, the streets have been pretty empty. It's been like a ghost town around here for the most part. I think people are taking heed to the curfew that we have in place, and also obviously the storm. I think it's just common sense to stay off the streets during something like this. Hopefully, it's common sense.
All right. Yeah, hopefully indeed. All right, Gideon Ape, thank you so much for that perspective. Again, the news, a crane has now cracked in Miami, one of the more than 20 that do line this city. They didn't have time to take them down, Anderson. We got several more hours of these wind gusts now, 100 miles an hour in those high rises, so people really need to be careful. Stay away from your windows if you are in a high rise anywhere near those buildings. Anderson?
Yeah, John, that's obviously a huge concern here in Tampa. This is a city that has been booming. There's been a big construction boom. There's two cranes. I don't know if you can pan over. There's two cranes right over here, just off the Hillsborough River. Obviously, they have tried to secure those, but as you know by now, if you've been watching our coverage, the cranes, the perpendicular cranes, are left to float freely and act basically as a weather vane. But there's big questions about how prepared Tampa is for a storm of this magnitude and storm surge of this magnitude. 5 to 8 feet was the estimate as of yesterday. It was 1921 when a Category 3 storm hit Tampa. It caused widespread damage. Thankfully, the city was not, there weren't a lot of people living here at the time. Only one fatality was reported, but there was an awful lot of damage done here. And so this city has not really had a direct hit since that storm nearly 100 years ago. So there's a lot of anticipation. And obviously, yesterday morning, people woke up to a very different reality here in Tampa and really all along the west coast of Florida. As we talked about when we were in Fort Myers yesterday, a lot of people who had left Miami and come to Tampa or Fort Myers or other places on the west coast to evacuate from Miami were suddenly faced with the realization that, wait a minute, we are now in the eye of this thing. Do we go back to Miami? Do we go north? Or do we seek shelter? And we saw yesterday a lot of people seeking shelters. In fact, cities all across the coast were scrambling to open up more shelters to accommodate the numbers of people. Drew Griffin is in a shelter by Fort Myers. Drew, explain where you are and what's the scene inside that shelter? Because yesterday you were out there for hours with people who were waiting in line 4 or 5 hours, and thousands of people outside the Germain Arena, which is a hockey arena, which holds about 8,000.
Yeah, it was not a pleasant line to be in as you were waiting in the heat to get in. And from what the people who were inside told me, it was not pleasant last night. You're in there with thousands of people, all kind of last minute decisions to get there. You were told to bring 3 days supply of food, your bedding. They only are going to provide that make you safe, Anderson. It's east of I-75 where we are and outside of Fort Myers, Zone C, flood zone. So that is what they think is not going to be susceptible to any kind of that storm surge. But we went back there this morning, and it just really looked like those folks had been through a miserable night. They're not letting cameras inside for privacy issues, but outside, we just met lots and lots of people who said their night was terrible. The day is going to be terrible. They're just huddled down in there, just waiting for this storm to be over. To be fair to the officials, they gave them safe shelter and are going to give them safe shelter. They never promised it was going to be a 4-star luxury resort, and it is not. So we're going to hear a lot of complaints coming out of there, Anderson. But like I said, good. We'll be able to at least hear those people complain who have gone through this storm. Anderson?
Yeah, and Drew, I mean, it bears repeating, people were told to bring supplies to that shelter. I mean, the shelter was supposed to have supplies as well and did, but people are told to bring items, bring things for at least 3 days. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I mean, you've got to prepare. You can't rely on the government to provide everything for you, especially in these conditions. And keep in mind, everybody in the government has their own family to deal with. There were lots and lots of people outside the shelter smoking. A lot of people brought enough smokes for their visit. So I'm just saying, you got to be prepared for these kind of things, and most people in Florida are. Anderson.
Yeah, I talked to the mayor here in Tampa yesterday, who was saying, you know, they were in the days before this, while they were preparing for the storm, there's no doubt about it, they knew the size of the storm, it was going to affect Tampa no matter what. But they were also thinking about how they were going to be helping other communities, perhaps on the East Coast, where it seemed earlier in the week that the storm was really going to be tracking. And then again, yesterday, the mayor, you know, had a very different reality to face. This is a city which may be asking for help from cities on the East Coast in the days ahead. We're going to take a short break. Our coverage continues in a moment.
Well, it's very rainy, very, very windy. We've actually moved. We may not look like we're in a safe location, but we really feel safe. We've moved to a structure because we're not on the docks anymore. I'm going to step this way so you can see what's going on out here. But this really gives you a really nice vantage point of the Tarpon Point Marina here. And you can see all the boats out in the distance, the swing. But I want you to look out to the point of the palm trees. You ever notice on Matt 7 Day when he puts the wavy palm tree in the wind up, or maybe the double one because there's a hurricane? Well, that's what it looks like in real life. You see it right there. You can also see how choppy right now and how aggressive the river looks. That's the Caloosahatchee River right there. So that gives you an idea of just how close we are to it. And you can see all the boat docks here. We left the boat docks. It was just too windy up there. So we're going to step kind of inside the structure here right now. We're a little better protected. And I want you to look at the docks and look down there, because occasionally we'll actually see people down there who are just doing some final checks on their boat, making sure everything is okay. We really kind of at this point advise against that. That's why we left the docks, because it's super windy down there. But we did have a chance to meet up with one gentleman who was doing a final check on his boat. And of course, just like everyone's been saying, all our meteorologists have been telling us, we're really concerned about that storm surge. And let's take a listen to what he had to say about the storm surge, because he's also concerned.
But I think we could probably get an 8-foot surge in here, which would put water almost up in this where we're standing here. So we're hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst as usual.
Okay, take a live look at this right now, guys. That is a sailboat out there. It is anchored out in the cove here at Tarpon Point. Now, typically, any major boater or mariner in Southwest Florida would tell you this cove in Southwest Florida, probably one of the safest anchorages we have out here. They'll come in here all the time, maybe on a weekend to avoid a storm. Obviously, this is not your average storm, not your average day. We assume that probably nobody is on that vessel. They've probably dinging to shore. But if you saw how small it was and you saw the way the wind was just blowing it and crashing water against it, that just gives you an idea of what the conditions are out here. So like I said, we've come up off the dock. We're in this parking structure now, kind of 5 stories up, but we're pretty protected in here, so we feel a little bit safe. So we give you just a little bit more from the look outside before we have to go inside, before things get a little too hairy. But again, the conditions continue to deteriorate, especially here in Cape Coral. We can also report, I know you guys probably talked about a little bit ago, Lee County deputies have pulled their deputies off the road. Cape Coral police and first responders here in Cape Coral doing the same thing once those winds reach 40 miles an hour. And basically, we're right about there, guys.
Yeah, Mother Nature making that sailboat almost look like a toy there in the water. Thanks, John. Well, this is apparently our camera out at the Hyatt at Coconut Point. You can't see anything.
And that's very telling that you can't see anything. You can just see how heavy the rain is falling. And, you know, you mix the rain with the wind and you get this sort of effect. You can barely see. I'm sure the visibility is down dramatically out there.
And again, this is at Coconut Point. I do want to just tell you, so this is an image in Coconut Point. Sarah, in Marco Island, you can imagine what they're dealing with. And we did just get into the newsroom. I want to get this out real quick because we were talking to Scott, who was sheltering in Marco Island with 4 other people, that they have experienced system-wide water pressure loss. So they said at this point you need, if you're there, you need to boil
just look
water
at
until
what the
further
conditions
notice.
are like
For the
out
few
here
people
in
who,
Miami Beach.
were not.
And a little perspective, the area that we're standing at is not as bad as some of the city streets that are literally wind tunnels. The force of the wind is much worse. That area that you're looking at right now, if you go just over the berm, my producer Tristan Smith went over there just to see if the storm surge had come in. It had not, but he was completely beat up by the winds and the sand. It is very dangerous out here. You want to make sure. The thing that we're watching for is any sort of flying debris. We've seen at least 3 street signs come down. That type very, very dangerous. But just trying to stand here.
All right, I think we're losing Kyunghwa out at Miami Beach. Kyunghwa is out of Miami Beach, by the way, which is out there. You can't really see it now because it is raining so hard and the clouds have come in so thick. They have had serious issues with the winds out there. We're having it here, too, in Miami. We have had debris flying off the buildings. And, of course, the breaking news is this cracked crane in downtown Miami. I want to go to Rosa Flores, who is in Miami right now, for an update on what she is seeing. Rosa.
Well, John, we've been monitoring those cranes for days now because, as you mentioned, the city officials told us that they did not have enough time to move those cranes. Here in this area where I'm at, if we just tilt our camera, you'll see that there are two cranes right behind me. They're swaying in the wind. We've seen them continuously. Now, what we're seeing are wind tunnels. These wind tunnels wrap around buildings and they really, really gain a lot of strength. And so whenever we see and hear those wind tunnels, and the only way to describe them is this high-pitched screeching sound, that's when we see those cranes sway even more. Of course, a huge concern for everybody living in these high-rises in downtown Miami. Now, city officials advise people that these high-rising buildings because of that. Now, whether it's advised, then the hurricane is a category 3 or 4, for example. You've got to add a category in order for you to realize how the wind speed is in a lot of these high-rise buildings. Now, the one that's right behind me, these people appear to have heeded the warning. I don't see any patio furniture, which is one of the things that city officials recommended, that they needed to remove everything from their balconies because, of course, during a storm, all of that becomes flying debris, projectiles. So we've seen a few people come out of their balconies. That's what city officials don't recommend for people to do. They're asking people to stay indoors, hunker down. And John, believe it or not, in the last hour, we saw a family speed through here. And we didn't get to talk to them because they were driving so fast, but it looked like they were trying to evacuate at this hour. That, of course, would city officials and first responders are not recommending because the conditions are very dangerous at this hour. John?
Yeah, you're better off staying where you are right now. First responders not responding to calls in all of Miami-Dade County. That's a county of more than 2.5 million people. Not safe for them to be out because the wind's consistently higher than 40 miles an hour. That's just here in Miami-Dade. The entire East Coast of southern Florida feeling the impact of this storm right now. I want to go up the coast to Brian Todd, who's in West Palm Beach. Brian.
John, very intense wind activity has kicked up in the last couple of hours here. What we're vulnerable to right now is tornadoes. Our weather team has told us that because we're on the so-called dirty side of the storm, where most of the energy, at least at this hour, is going to be pushing toward us, tornadoes, pop-up tornadoes are going to be a threat all day. We've been under tornado warnings. That means flying debris, trees snapping, wires coming down. We got a word from a city official not long ago that they do have a word of a tree pinching down a wire in town. They're monitoring this closely. Storm surge is also a threat here. We're by the Intercoastal Waterway. Down there, you can see the intensity of the storm surge against that walkway there as the waves slap up against it. That's only going to get worse as the hurricane conditions worsen in the next few hours. We're going to try to walk over this way along this railing. Got to hold on to it a little bit because, as you've been reporting, John, that cracking of the crane in Miami, officials here have been worried about that for several days. There are two large construction cranes just off my shoulder. You can see them up there. They've been swaying in the wind a little bit. There are two other construction cranes further to my right, to your left, down the block. Here is that these construction cranes are right next to apartment buildings in some cases. And we've talked to residents who've said they are really afraid of these construction cranes coming down on them. Down that way, south on Flagler Street, we talked to a resident where there was a construction crane literally right next to her building. And she said, I am very concerned about this thing coming down on my building. So we're going to be watching these things very closely. Also, John, over here is a construction site with a lot of loose debris flying. As these tornadic conditions
conditions start to impact us here in West Palm Beach, we've got to keep a close eye on that. A lot of flying debris. You can see the strain on these palm trees. There are palm fronds down on the ground over there. Those become projectiles in a case like this. So we're monitoring all this really closely, and of course, keeping a close eye on those cranes back there. I'm going to toss it back to Chris Cuomo.
All right, Brian, you're a pro. Be smart, be safe. Let us know what we need to know and when to come back to you. We have a crane over our shoulder here in Naples. So far, so good, but it is something that they keep an eye on. We had the city manager on. There have been gusts here reported in excess of 70 miles an hour. Not a big deal, but we're also hours away from what was supposed to be the bad stuff from Irma. So there's a concern about the consistency of the beating and the duration of the water and what that will mean to an already vulnerable and low-lying area. So let's get to Chad Myers. Chad, you gave me a piece of information. I checked with the city manager. You were right. They are seeing what does look like a wild phenomenon here. Yes. The water seems to be receding. Yes. And you were right about something else. It does fuel false optimism. People are reporting it as a good thing. The water seems to be leaving, but what is the reality?
The reality is that the water is getting blown out of Naples, getting blown out of Tampa Bay, getting blown on all of the rivers on the west side of the state because the wind is blowing in that direction into the Gulf of Mexico. The wind blowing into Miami, water still going up almost 6 feet above low tide right now in Miami and still going up. There's the new track, brand new track, takes the storm over just about Fort Myers as a landfall, if we'll call it that, skirting the coast, significantly grinding the coast here, Sarasota, Annabelle, all the way down even into Fort Myers, Venice as well. That's the problem. It's not going to lose power because it's still half on water, half on land, and really doing damage to all of those coastal communities here. As the storm goes by, Chris, your wind will shift to this direction, so all the water that went out is going to come crashing back in.